Great. All right, so we're recording here on Zoom. We are live on Facebook. I have a special guest with me today, everybody. Appreciate you tuning in. My name is Carl. My guest is in the San Diego area. He's an awesome, I call him a movement guru because I learned so much from this gentleman. So, without further ado, I want to introduce my guest, mi hermano de otra madre, Mr. Andy Hsieh. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. Thanks for the invite, man. It's always fun to have, to be on your podcast.
Trying to step up my game here with a little bit of different video and sound. So,
Yeah, for sure,
because
man.
otherwise, I'm sound like I'm in a tin can
Mhm.
where I'm at. Anyway, so you sound great coming through here. Great. So, how you doing?
Good, man. A lot of changes, of course, but yeah, it's been a fascinating journey in the last year.
Yeah,
hmm
yeah. So, where are you right now? Are you in your studio?
Yep, this is my office in my studio. So, yeah,
So,
one of the tenants
this is where
actually.
I have been. Right, I've been there a
Yeah,
few times.
yep,
Okay,
yep.
same
Yeah,
place.
you've just never used. Yeah, been in this office before because I used to rent this room out, or was storage. One of those.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Uh huh.
I love the map in the background.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Uh huh.
How you been, dude? It's been so long. It's been like more than 6, 7 months since we talked.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a little.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing really well. Some of the people watching they'll know I was dealing with COVID. It was tough, man. I had a really different type of battle with it than most people.
Yeah.
No
I heard posts.
respiratory.
I was like, what the heck is going on with this guy? My God.
'Cause I feel like an old fart sometimes, but I actually don't feel like an old fart. I
hmm
feel like a young fart who's just my body disagrees with me sometimes.
Yep.
So 60's coming in June, but I don't even think of honestly. I swear to God, I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
All I think about is what can I do to make myself healthier so
hmm
I can be around longer. I have a granddaughter now since we talked last.
Yeah, man. That's
3 months
lovely.
old today. She's completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And, just doing what I can do. It's been a little weird lately, but one thing I'm able to do is sit and interview. I can sit and
Yeah.
I can talk. Yeah, it's no
Yeah.
problem with that. And the past couple of days have been great. So all this stuff's going to go away. It's all going to be fine for me as
hmm
far as any issues. And but what about you, man? So are you seeing people live, like in person? They're
hmm
coming in. Yeah, good.
Yeah. So obviously, like we're taking precautions and stuff, and
Hmm.
California has been a nightmare. But ultimately, like I closed for like a good month and a half during the lockdown in March. But I
Hmm.
was grateful that my buddy Ben, he's a chiropractor, and he decided to close his studio. And he literally just messaged me. He's like, "Dude, like, do you have space at your place?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, um, come by
Good.
anytime." And then he bought by that afternoon. We talked a little bit. It's like, sweet, starting April 1st, like you move in. And what's good is that pretty much like we can be under his umbrella as a chiropractor so that the studio can still run as as essential workers and stuff. So yeah, and I'm also grateful that this place is really, really secluded, and plus like I don't have more than 2 people, 3 people in the studio at any point in time, so we can keep very good distance and wear masks and all of that stuff. So pretty
Yeah,
much been running business as usual for the most part. um
good.
yeah, and irony is I got busier for like a good like 7, 8 months out of that time because like a lot of people were like itching to come back. I tried the online thing for a while. I was like, I just can't do this. Like, um, it wasn't the training part. It was just I didn't have the passion for just looking at people through the screen and trying to coach them and help them figure it out, especially when they have pain and all of that stuff. Like, I can't poke and prod. I'm like, this is like what I do. I need my hands, I need tactile feedback. And if I can't do that, then the quality of service is just not as good. So yeah, for the people who wanted to come back, like they came back, and yeah, things been running pretty smoothly for the most part.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's hard to get the same kind of you can't get the same kind of feedback.
yeah, not at all.
Um,
Yeah.
first I have a handful of people, literally like 4 or 5 people I can Zoom or whatever virtual, and we get through it fine because I don't need any special feedback
Mm-hmm.
from them. We just go through and we do what we do. They do a good job. It keeps them
Yep.
moving. But
Yep.
there are some other people. There's no way I
Yep.
can't do it like that. So
Mm-hmm.
a mask up, test every Thursday for COVID,
Mm-hmm.
test negative except for when I was positive,
Yep.
and then you know go into these places where they need a test that shows negative, and then I can go in because a
Yeah.
lot of them live alone and
Yep.
insisted. Of course, my population is
Very different for sure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
but and a lot of people are lonely right now too. They've been lonely for a while because, well, we've been like stuck inside where we live, and if we can't go anywhere, we don't have a car and
Yep.
transportation, and we're alone.
Yeah.
They're really happy to see somebody.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm not the best at articulating my questions. That's why I take the coffee approach. You're on the other side of the table, and I'm
Yes,
here.
sir.
We're drinking
Cheers.
coffee or whatever. That's a great mug.
Yep. My client gave that to me
That's
actually.
a really
I
good
gave
one,
it to
man.
her like every single time she came in, and then that was a Christmas gift.
Oh man, I love that. That's great. I have two favorites. I got the one from Mexico, and then the other one's from Mexico too. So today's this one, and Laura's with us in Mexico, and Russ Parker's with us.
Hey Russ, how's it going, man? It's good to see you,
I
dude.
see Laura's in the Facebook live feed. Mitchell Bosley, no Mitchell Bosley.
I don't think
He's
I've heard of Mitchell.
or it could be
Thanks for joining.
Michelle. I'm not sure. Very sorry if I pronounce wrong. Scott Hoke. He's the one I got this microphone from.
Hey, it sounds good. I like
So
it.
before we get into movement, though, I got to say, these conversations can be a little random. We'll get into movement at some point, folks. But when I was with you a couple different times, anytime I was in San Diego, for some reason, I'm not cheap, but they always had a really good deal on like if you want to call it a muscle car,
Yeah.
which is usually a 6 cylinder, but still, I
Uh-huh.
remember one time in particular, I had a Challenger, brand new Dodge Challenger I rented, and I forget what you're driving, but it's faster than hell.
Yep, my Golf GTI back then.
Yeah, man, I tell you, man, I remember like flying,
Yeah.
kind of like racing you.
I remember that.
And we had to be like 90, 95 miles an hour, maybe more. 'Cause I'm like, one time I think no, I think Allison was with me. I
Yep.
just pedal to the metal, man. I'm
Yep.
like, damn, that guy can drive.
Yep, I've upgraded since then. So yeah, I got my Subaru WRX STI little all-wheel drive rally car. Like I've been having a lot of fun modifying it and playing around, and yeah, that's one of my side passions. And I realized it's actually to this date the most consistent thing that I've actually enjoyed for the longest period of time. It used to be movement. I thought it was movement, but like yeah, I went on like a movement hiatus in the last 3 years. Like I teach movement, I do all of that stuff, but the passion for it, I have more passion in coaching it than practicing it myself because I felt like I hit a limit to the fundamental stuff because that's what I teach, like
Mm-hmm.
squatting, lunging, learning how to breathe, how to move and flow and
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. Like I got I'd say I'm, close to the top tier. And if I wanted to get to the ultimate tier, I could absolutely put more practice into it.
Mm-hmm.
But that also essentially inhibits my philosophy a little bit because my main philosophy is to be like a dabbler of all trades and a master of none. Because a lot of the times, especially when it comes to movement, when you're pushing to become a master at that high of a level, you're putting your body in such a physical toll that is inherently in some point in time going to reduce the longevity of the body.
Yeah.
So I like to play with the body quite a lot, and the more I got, yeah, good at the fundamentals, like there were less things I could play with. So like I got actually got very lazy during COVID. Like my motivation to just, move and flow and stuff diminished quite a lot. I'd still go for hikes. I started surfing, which is another form of movement that humbled the
Oh,
crap out of me.
that's great.
And it is such an amazing experience, but also like there's no consistency in it because you're by weather. There's so many factors, like, oh, is it a good surf day? Are the waves too big, too small? Is it going to rain
Mm-hmm.
like crazy, which is going to like make you not be able to surf for a few days and stuff? So like all of those into consideration, I was like, I couldn't get fully consistent at surfing like a lot of my surfing friends did. Plus I'm further away from the beach and all of that stuff. So but coming back, it's driving. Since I got my first car at 18 years old, I've always put it to the floor and had fun around corners and wanted to learn more about how to drive fast and safe and go on. I still to this day want to go on track days and
Oh,
learn how
that's
to drive
great.
dirt road and like learn how to drift and all of that stuff. So I realized this year I have two main goals. Like business aside, it's going to be one, um getting more driving, actually just one fundamental, as in hiring my own coaches, one for driving and then two for movement itself. um
Great.
and yeah, so that's when I realized I actually got my first lesson in kung fu again starting yesterday. Finally like found sifu that I can train with,
Oh, that's
because
great.
again, like going back to movement, I plateaued in pretty much all the ones that I wanted to do, whether it's from kettlebells, Olympic lifting, powerlifting, bodybuilding, like animal flow, all of those things. I've gotten
Yeah.
so pretty damn good at it that I have no reason to get better at it. Like even with rock climbing, I got to mid-level range. If I started pushing my body even further, like that's usually a higher risk of injuries and all of that stuff. Excuse the planes if you can
No,
hear
that's
that.
fine.
Um, so yeah, but martial arts was my roots of movement since I was 8 to 13 years old. That's when I started that journey. But at 13, my parents just stopped taking me to the classes and stuff. So I literally never had a long-term coach since then. And
Mm-hmm.
then I realized I've been a coach to everybody else, trained over 1,000 people now, and but I never had consistent coaching, as in me just being a blank slate and learning everything that one person will teach me for an X amount of time. And I realized that that is something that I need. Even pro athletes have their coach for their entire careers and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, and I tell my clients that all the time, and that is part of the trainer sales pitch, to keep long-term clients and all of that stuff, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, and but I'm like, I haven't had my own coach since I was 13 years old. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the time to start investing and be humble, be a blank slate, and do things that I've actually never done. And so I'm
That's
excited
cool.
for this challenge for sure.
That's cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
So going back to driving for 1 second.
Hmm.
Um, my friend Scott Hoke, who's watching on Facebook now, I got this microphone from him. He is the voice who read the audio version of my Parkinson's book,
Mm,
and he just sounds amazing.
nice, man.
So that's on Audible. But anyways, bottom line is, um, yeah, sometimes ADHD kicks in, and then I forget what the hell I was going to say. Oh yeah, so Scott is on this show that I love watching because I love cars, man. I love him. So he is the host. He's the voice you hear, and sometimes they show him also on the Meekum Auto Auction
Oh,
television show. So if you're
okay.
ever scrolling through, you see MECUM Auto.
Oh, I can
You're
watch.
watching Scott. You're listening to Scott. So
Yeah.
he read my book. He got the Sennheiser fancy mic from him. I love this thing, and
Mm.
thank you, Scott. By the way, hip replacement tomorrow, dude. Right? Sorry, I'm saying it on Facebook Live. I don't know if I should, but we wish you luck, and you're gonna be kicking butt, man. You're gonna be so happy that you had it done. Um, yeah. So driving, yeah. We'll get to movement in a second. It was a ball. I remember another time going to lunch. We went up the hill out of your place parking lot, go up, then we turn left to go
Uh-huh.
towards like a highway.
Yep.
Like, boom! I was like, holy, that little car can go fast.
Yep. For sure.
Holy crap. Yeah, Scott Hoke. Yes, Joel. It is Scott Hoke who is the man. We had just a thing here in the chat box. So I think we have some people a little bit itching to learn a little bit about movement. And
Mm-hmm.
I also want to hear a few things. Number one, I'm curious to know about your approach. Three things, so however you want to talk about it. Plus, I'll just say the fundamentals of movement. Kay
Mm-hmm.
Kratz is sending that. So we'll keep that in mind. The question, fundamentals of movement. Russ Parker, one of my instructors, and more than anything, a great, great friend. Uh, he says, good to see you. Looking forward to hearing your insights. And he's learned a lot from you. So yeah, that's fantastic. So, anyways, the three things besides fundamentals of movement, I'm wondering is your overall approach to, let's say, movement, any assessments you do, because I have a whole thing about assessments that
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to be doing some. But do you know what I mean if I say that some entities or schools of whatever movement teach
Mm-hmm.
things that are kind of irrelevant sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so not everything's irrelevant. It's just that some things are more relevant than others, depending upon who you're working with too. But approach the movement, assessments, how are you looking at movement so you can help people get where they want to be,
Yeah.
and moving pain free.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do a lot with that.
Yeah, that's 90% of how I start or how people find me is, I mean, they have pain. And that's ultimately, in my belief, what happens with a lot of like musculoskeletal, even nervous like system issues with chronic pain is that we're lacking the fundamental movements. Um, so if we've been moving, I'd say not incorrectly, but just inefficiently for a specific period of time with those bad reps time after time, over time, like it just, the brain just says, hey, like you use this muscle too much. I'm so tired of using this specific muscle for so long. I'm going to send you a signal of pain to tell you to stop. And most
Mm-hmm.
of the times when we stop, we rest, and then after we rest or get some corrective surgery or whatever it is, or we pop a pill to ignore it or to reduce the inflammation, but after that, we go back to exactly how we were moving without any correction of that. So the injury keeps reoccurring, and it's just this time and time again. We go through this negative feedback loop every single time. So the whole idea is that that negative feedback loop can be called pain. It can be called, bad movement. It can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to correct that, when we need to see where that feedback is, as soon as we can disrupt that cycle by whatever intervention, whether it's releasing a tight muscle, whether it's stretching, whether it's breathing, whether it's eating a little bit better, whether it's just down regulating the nervous system or whatever it is, then the body can start the healing process. And all we need to do is teach better movement patterns on top of that in order to help facilitate that healing process to keep settling in. And over time, just keep building those better patterns, and the body will naturally start eliminating the pain. A lot of the times, it's very quick within a session or two. Other
Yeah.
times, it takes months and months, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
even years, to be able to repattern that negative pattern that's been ingrained into our DNA for so long. And ultimately, like pain, performance, longevity, like I talk about that all the time. That's what my whole studio is about. It's just about finding that balance between all of it, right?
Yeah.
But the fundamentals of everyday life, like normal humans versus supreme athletes,
Mm-hmm.
is it's different. The issue I have is that most of the times, based on our current Western training methods, is we're taking that data from elite athletes and we're putting that to general population training. I'm like, we don't need such high level training for normal athletes. We just need enough to get our clients from where they are right now to actually just where they don't want to be. That's
Mm-hmm.
what Dan John says. A lot of the times, like, we don't know where point B is. We're at point A. We just want to be at point not A, because A is just somewhere we don't want to be, but we don't know where we our true goals are. Like,
Yeah.
usually our goals are actually put upon us by, research, by what other people are saying, but not by what we believe ourselves. So, yeah, I kind of went on a full circle hiatus over there. So, um, but I feel like that's kind of like how everything is. It's just being able to figure out what type of movement interventions and how we like to train in order, like, to live the life that we want. So ultimately, like, what is your end game? Like, do you want to live a long, fulfilling, healthy life, or are you pushing to just be strong and look better? Those are two completely different things, and they do not go hand in hand. Most of the times people think they do, but I don't believe that at all.
Well, I'm going to chime in for a second.
Hmm. Yeah.
First of all, you're the first person in our movement business who I've actually heard say that, and you articulated it perfectly, in my opinion. There's data to show you are correct. It comes from it comes from Harvard, and probably other places too. But for example, if you look at the research of Dr. David Sinclair at Harvard, his whole thing is about longevity,
Hmm.
and he has a whole bunch of startup companies making different things, different supplements and things that help the cells to maintain their integrity. And really what he's trying to do, he's been on Rogan and a bunch of things, but he's a really interesting guy
Hmm.
who's who considers aging to be a disease,
Hmm.
basically, because aging is looked at as, oh, everyone does it, so it can't be a disease because it's normal.
Hmm.
And the health system and whoever are not going to look at it as a disease. So I'm just being a messenger here. Yes, we're going to get older, but you're looking at all this data that comes out and the research that he's done, and others as well, but he's most familiar with his. Is
Hmm.
if you do what you were talking about, for example, be stronger, move better, live longer,
Hmm.
with just not the non elite athlete training goals,
Hmm.
you will probably live longer because, yeah, Russ says he loves the not point A thing. Many
Yeah.
mistakenly look past that. Yeah, I think that's really important. So if we look at the training hard,
Hmm.
as a matter of fact, there are so many elite athletes who don't live as long as
Oh,
people
that's
who aren't elite
true
athletes.
data.
And
Most athletes don't like actually have
yeah,
like 10 to 15 years less longevity than most.
absolutely. So this, I mean, I'm just here to basically interject that what you say is absolutely correct. I mean, everything is a generalization, but generally speaking, though, like Roger Bannister's still alive. He's 80 something years old, right? But
Hmm.
I don't know if how long he was elite. He broke the 4 minute mile, but he's still alive. A lot of
Yeah.
people, though, they're dead in their late 60s, mid 70s. And what Sinclair says is, when you train like that and you're maybe ultra runner and doing a marathon every weekend and all this other stuff, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it is a choice. And it usually, if you choose that, it will catch up to you in later years. And then,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. And it
stuff
all comes
happens.
back to like asking that question, like, what is your end game? If you want to choose to do ultra marathon and all of that stuff, why? Why does doing hundreds of miles in one competition, wrecking your body, feeling so crappy after
Hmm.
that, like, what's the point of that? And if your answer is because that's my life calling and I want to do it and I choose to sacrifice my longevity for it because I love that and it gives me a sense of purpose, 100% go for it.
Yeah.
But most of the people who do that are like, I just want to challenge myself to see if it can be done, or I'm doing it to be in shape and be healthy. So if it's the latter, probably not the best idea. There's just so many other things that can be done in order to help facilitate that instead.
Yeah, and besides injury, there's so many other problems that can occur
Mm-hmm.
from basically overtraining.
Yep.
And I just want
Right.
to make a comment to Joel Yoder. I see your question here, so I'm going to hold that aside, but we're going to get to that soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So I have a couple other friends watching: Sean Whalen, Steve Hunt, two amazing keyboard players.
Nice.
I got like two lives: music and movement. We're gonna
Oh,
merge them together into one shortly.
that's great.
So you're taking the person, they come in, you're finding out their end game.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say there's pain involved, because there probably is, because
Yep.
this is something you're known for, and you deal with it very effectively. This is a really generalized question, but what's your approach? What are you looking for?
Yeah.
Like, do you have a way of finding the pain? Are you doing manual stuff? Are you watching them move, or doing certain exercises?
Yes. So
Okay.
all of it. um, so essentially, it's funny the way I marketed and then branded myself is that my end game, as in the longevity aspect, like getting out of pain, so that most of the people who come find me just don't want to be at point A, right? Because they're all hurting from something, and at least they all have the motivation to want to move better. So aesthetics, all of that stuff is pretty much out of the equation. They don't care about how they look, how lean they are, and all of that stuff. They just want to not have pain and want to be able to move and play with their kids and grandkids and all of that stuff without pain. So um, once we clear that out, most of the times I always start with where does it hurt the most, right? So what is the main intent of coming in? Most of the times it's a laundry list of like 5 or 6 things. Other times just like, oh, my knee hurts or my back hurts every time I do X movement. So my movement assessment starts very simple by just making them do the movement that hurts, so that I can one understand if there is a movement pattern that's inefficient. So for example, if they have lower back pain, I put a pencil on the ground. It's like, can you pick that up for me? And if
Hmm.
they pick it up in this specific way, um, and if that hurts, then I'm like, hey, maybe that's the issue. What if we change that pattern and instead of rounding your back, we hinge? And if the hinge takes it away, then, oh, okay, then it's not, like a muscular thing. It's literally just a movement thing. So I just teach them better movements and that
Hmm.
typically fixes itself. But if here's where it's very interesting. For example, if they have back pain and they bend their back, it hurts. They hinge, it hurts. They roll around, it hurts. Or when they do one of these two movements in combination that recreates it, then I'm like, huh, okay, this is not just a muscular thing. It's usually a neurological thing that we need to correct as well. So,
Hmm.
but I go through normal movements as in squats, NASM style overhead squats, elevate the heels, see what happens, single leg movements, let them bend, rotate, up and down. So initially movements that hurt first and then general big movements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, After that, it gives me a general idea of what is happening. 99% of the time, there is some type of foot collapsing, which creates knee valgus, which in the knee
Sure.
turns in, which creates lengthening of the spinal erectors. Hence, we overextend, and then the neck gets all jacked up and stuff. So, I typically look at the ankles, the hips, and the neck. So, those are the three joints that I put top priority to
Hmm.
because if each of these joints have some type of dysfunction, whether from the top down or from the bottom up, it creates those symptoms of pain anywhere between those. Um,
Yeah,
so,
exactly. It's amazing what the chain reaction is like. The
yep,
compensations, and then a compensation from a compensation, and so on and
yep,
so forth. Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, so my assessments are kind of based on that. And so after those assessments, I have a brief idea of what I'm going to do with them when I pop them on the table. And that's where neurokinetic therapy comes in for the most part, or even just general tissue work. So for the people who don't know much about neurokinetic therapy, David Weinstock is the founder, and ultimately, it's quote unquote very simple muscle testing system, but
Mm-hmm.
the complications are within the simplicity, right? But essentially, it's just designed to find out neurologically inhibited muscles and see what is neurologically facilitating it. So
Mm-hmm.
we all talk about there's an overactive muscle, underactive muscle. NKT helps map that out by muscle testing. For example, if I want to find the glute muscle, I'll just see if I can activate the glute. And if that doesn't fire, then there's another muscle that's typically compensating, and I
Mm-hmm.
would find which muscle is compensating. And usually the facilitated muscle is very, very tight, overactive. So, for example, if a client has knee valgus, 99% of the time, there's some type of tightness within the medial soleus, the flexor hallucis longus, and the digitorum longus. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
muscles are tight, it's pulling the leg in. Deep
Mm-hmm.
adductors get tight, is rotating the hip internally, which creates inactive glutes, which creates the lower back to overextend. So that same pattern that I was talking about. And then, so basically, NKT just helps me map out which one of those muscles that I need to release manually or teach them how to do it themselves in order to reopen those lines. And ultimately, if that line is open and the brain goes, hey, there's flow there, my brain can send signals to the muscle that I'm trying to activate, then and there's no reason for the body to feel stressed and tired, so the muscle kind of that you want to activate kicks back in. Then after that we go back outside to the gym and then retest the movements, and if the quality is better, if they feel more stable, many of the times pain dissipates either completely or significantly. And
Mm-hmm.
if that's a positive result, then I'll be like, okay, those muscles that I just worked on, I teach them how to do that themselves. And then once I
Yeah.
teach them how to do that, that's their homework to essentially tissue maintenance, just making sure that the tissues are nice and flowy and the blood flow can send there so that the brain can keep sending those positive signals to break that pattern. Remember, I
Yeah.
said we need to interrupt that pain cycle. Releasing tight tissues, stretching, whatever you call it, is just one small part of disrupting that brain cycle, that pain cycle. After we disrupted it, then we want to integrate and teach the body to be able to save this new pattern, as in getting them to feel safe. So you in Parkinson's, you teach rolling techniques and all of that stuff. Like that is essentially just allowing the nervous system to calm down. So
It really
once
is.
they
Yeah.
implement some of those things, then we can start activating the muscles that we want to try and fire. So
Mm-hmm.
as a movement guy, the glutes, the core, the lats are the three biggest muscles that I always try to get people to feel how to use them
Mm-hmm.
in any pattern possible. And 99% of the time, the reason why they come in is because all three tissues are unable to activate as well
Yeah.
as they think they should. So to summarize, my entire career as a whole is to be able to get people to activate the glutes, the core, and the lats, these three main muscles. Whether it's from a row, most of the times when we're pulling, the shoulders are shrugging forward, it's coming
Mm-hmm.
up, so the trap
Mm-hmm.
overactivates, the pec minors all, yeah, and then they feel nothing through this tissue over here. The
Right.
more we can break that cycle of, hey, can you find length through that collarbone? Can your shoulder drop down, pull, and then squeeze into the lat? Can you feel that? Neurologically inhibited people, one, have a very hard time dropping their shoulder, and two, even if they can get into this position, they still can't feel it. And that's where the disconnect comes in, and that's where it takes a lot of reps to start integrating that a little bit more. Many times NKT just helps immediately, like, oh, I can actually feel that a lot more once you release those tight overactive muscles and then immediate engagement. But you have to keep patterning that so that the body can start remembering it a little bit better.
That
Yes.
right.
Mm-hmm.
It's so you actually you may have answered a question here. I'm not sure. K Kratz,
Yes.
was that example that he
Mm-hmm.
just showed with lats an example that is that cool for an example? She
Yeah.
what she did is put a thing in the chat. I don't know if you can see it or not. Could
Yeah.
you
I
show an
can see that.
example?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. I a lot of the testing, the NKT stuff, I've got to get like into that and do it because it's just some of the cool stuff out there.
it's
And it's a really a
incredible.
way to just really just hone in and like boom, figure stuff out because you go into like this process of deduction,
Hmm.
taking things out, take it out, and then boom, you
But
get
we've
to the
all find
bottom.
our own way, like that's one thing very, very cool about NKT is it just exposes so much about um how the nervous system works in a
Mhm.
specific way, but it takes so much time, dedication, and practice in order to just feel the touch of what a muscle, like how to actually muscle test, that
Mhm.
many people get false positives and stuff like that, that they don't really know how to utilize it. Like I was doing that literally for like the first 4 or 5 months until I took all three levels and then went back and took level one again until I was like, oh, okay. I kind of been doing it wrong this entire time. In certain ways, I'm
Interesting.
still using it wrong in a lot of different ways, but I found my own method that works for me. And
Yeah.
that's the thing is like every single tool that we use, like we just need to, yeah, take that and utilize it in the way that we believe is right. Um, Not only for us, but more importantly for our clients. And as long as they help and it helps them and they see progress and stuff like that, that's the best we can do. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a really cool system.
Excuse me. It's interesting. Adam Wolf. Do you know
Yes.
Adam?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
That
we
guy
were.
is genius. Oh my god.
The guy's
I
fun.
literally have to sit there and like break down every single word that is saying and then replay it so that I can actually understand what's actually going on.
I tell you, he's one of those guys, man. We first met in New Jersey a few years ago when I went to the Rock Blades thing,
Yep.
which is technically out of my scope of practice, but I didn't do it for learning how to use blades and do
Hmm.
scraping and all that. I did it because I want to learn about the brain.
Yep.
That was a really good brain course.
Absolutely.
So we met the night before at a bar, and he started doing muscle testing on me.
Yep. I
This
think he
is
does
years.
NKT. He was an instructor for it.
Oh, was he? Okay,
I
yeah, yeah.
swear he did that. Yeah.
Well, it was really cool because I couldn't believe what he did. Then, I'm like, okay, I get it, but I didn't get it right away.
Yep.
He also did the vestibular, uh, they call it the barbecue roll.
Uh-huh.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yes. Uh-huh. Like the
Yeah.
reset. Yep. Hmm.
So he's, testing me this position, this and this and this. And, when am I, okay, got down on the floor in the bar
Yep.
and did the roll, got up, boom,
Yep.
strong.
Yep.
It was amazing. Totally
Yep.
freaked me out, but I loved it.
Yeah.
So, what I want to just mention here is so we have a few people watching who I know personally. Now I don't know their level of knowledge in movement, or let's
Hmm.
just take one little example, okay? And you mentioned it earlier when Andy said about feet collapsing. Think
Hmm.
about these are your feet, and they boom. Let's say you're flat-footed or so,
Yep.
right? So your feet are flat, and they're probably turned out just a little bit.
Hmm.
So that collapsing, that ankle joint, I don't have my
I can demo
anatomical.
it if you want. Like
Oh,
I'll show you
sure,
how
yeah, I
to
don't
do
have
it.
my anatomical foot model here, but
Yeah. So let's step back a little bit. I want to check, make sure the mic still works over here.
so this idea of foot collapsing
Yep.
or flat
So
feet
in a
leads to
perfect
this whole
scenario,
series of kinetic chain issues that can cause pain all the way up into your head just
mhm,
because your feet are flat. So, Andy, show us.
yeah. So in a perfect scenario, if I'm over here, like notice the knees are pointing straight down towards the midline of the leg. So actually, I always like to overemphasize that we have this nice little even space underneath the foot,
Mm-hmm.
and more importantly, it's actually looking at this ankle bone over here.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, the ankle bone is kind of aligned with the shin, and everything is straight. When the foot collapses, as in pronation, the arch dips under, and then this bone hooks inwards like this.
Mm-hmm.
So notice
We
like
see
this
a lot of that.
whole foot rotates in. Yeah, so there's like this little hook, and notice the arch, there's less space here. And look at the knee, it also turns in, which
Mm-hmm.
changes the angle of the hip, which turns in. So when a lot of the times when we're squatting, if the foot is constantly collapsing, that's why the knees are always pointing inwards, and then we also end up pulling with the lower
Yes.
back.
The
So this can
lumbar starts
literally
hurting. Yep.
create this overemphasis or even this in another scenario. So
Hmm.
it's either or. Like, so when that happens, like it just force pushes more pressure on all the other joints within the body. Well, that's not a wrong thing to do. Like I can do this and like do that for a while, but if that's the only way we know how to move, that's where the issue happens. So
Hmm.
all patterns are fine. There's nothing called a negative pattern unless you like over snap a joint or something like that. So like however we move in whatever direction, it actually doesn't matter. The problem is if that's literally the only thing that we know how to do. For example, if I'm squatting and this is the only way I know how to squat, add 50 pounds or even just do this for 25,000 repetitions, sometimes something's going to give at a certain
Yeah.
point in time. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with bending with a rounded back. There's nothing wrong with picking something heavy up with a rounded back, But if you this is the only way you know how to pick something up for 10,000 repetitions, that ingrains into the brain that over time, if something hurts, that's probably why. So the
Hmm.
idea is that we're not saying that this is bad. We're saying that, hey, can you do this? And can you do this? And can you do this? And move in all different positions that doesn't hurt. So when you pick up something one way that hurts, can you try another way? And do you have access to be able to find that other position and hold that shape and still add tension and strength? If not, maybe that's something to look into because most of the times we just say, hey, avoid that at all costs because that one movement is bad. It's like, no, no, no. There's a completely different thing of saying, pick up a box like this, as in, for example, when a doctor says, oh, like, you hurt your back, never pick up anything more than 5 pounds or 20 pounds. I'm like, are you serious? Like, your body weighs 100 and something pounds. Are you saying don't move at all? Or like if a person, human being, cannot pick up 5 pounds, there's something fundamentally wrong with
Very
how
much.
you're picking it up. I
Yeah.
don't care if I'm 100 years old. I still want to be able to pick up 5 pounds then. Like,
Hmm.
like it's just one of those things. It's not about how much weight it is. It's just about how much of your body can you control in order to be able to hold that weight and not have any issues and stuff.
So, question:
Yep.
as you're describing this, I'm thinking about some the training
Mhm.
that I've had in various places,
Yep.
and this is only a question.
Yep.
Um, are you thinking at all about like length tension relationships around a joint? For example, like
Hmm.
if the let's see, let's use a good what's a good example? Um, you got Pronis longus, Pronis brevis,
Hmm.
lateral gastroc jacked up,
Hmm.
while the tibialis posterior, tibialis anterior are on slack.
Hmm.
And then we got that footy version. I mean, in pronation.
Pronation. Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So this is what I was when I was teaching for Emily for a couple of years.
Hmm.
Of course, I learned a lot about feet and muscles and
Yes.
the
Uh-huh.
intrinsic muscles of the feet. Man, there's so many, right, and bones too. But are you thinking about that when you're doing your thing with clients? Um,
With those
Let me give you
muscles,
another
like,
example. Let's
hmm,
just give you another because if we
hmm,
look at, for example, National Academy of Sports Medicine, a couple other entities out there,
hmm,
they're going after the releases, the stretching, maybe a self-administered joint mob, which is possible. And if
yep,
anyone thinks it's not, contact me because it is possible many times.
hmm,
Okay. Even if you're a trainer and you're doing it with the people you're working with, there are ways to do it where if it's out of your scope to manipulate or touch anyone, you can still teach how to do. But and then activation of the underactive. So is that in your thought process? Is that in your thought?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely, for
Right, right.
sure. Hmm.
I mean, I know it
Yeah.
is, but I just had to
So it
ask that
really
because
just
I want to
depends on
make
the
sure.
case.
Yeah, yeah. Um, how
So how I
much?
like to train is,
Mhm.
hmm,
Oh no, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
the main thing is, I feel like a lot of the times we can look too much into the assessments and seeing like all of these compensations.
Yeah.
But my opinion, as a trainer, cue first, right? See if you can get them to hold the shape that you want them to hold without pain. For example, if they're constantly pronating, yes, they might be those specific overactive muscles and stuff. But when you teach that foot to be able to find that arch and short foot and be able to hold that space,
Yeah.
can they do it? And if they can, that requires a lot less work to constantly have to manipulate tissues and do all of that stuff. Like leave that to the medical professionals, but as just a trainer, just teach them to be able to hold that shape and then work on that. And then build the reps in because the brain will start stripping out those no, those negative tags that's been creating that issue. And
Yeah.
over time, the stronger you get and being able to hold that position, then your body will naturally just start developing better patterns and it basically just goes up that entire line. So again, like I always try to look for nice good foot ankle stability, hip stability, as in learning how to find where neutral hip position is, not
Hmm.
too anterior, not too posterior, just finding the middle, and then finding a good position in the neck, because these are the three joints where I feel like most of us go wrong because we're stuck here all day.
Yeah.
Like I have
Exactly.
literally a reverse curve in my neck, like like almost every single person in the population. When you just relaxing and slouching, the neck is like this, and mine is curved in even a little bit. It's about to start curving, but a normal neck should have good extension, as in like it should have a nice little curve over there. We
Hmm.
all lose it over time, and if you lose it earlier in life, as in the millennials now, even me myself at 30, like having a reverse curve, probably not a good thing. But if we can teach our body to hold a better shape and better alignment with less effort over time, there's no reason for the body to still have pain and keep breaking down and stuff like that. It's all about how
Yeah.
safe does your body and your brain feel in the current positions that you're in. And if it's not ideal, then we just need to shift that position a little bit and see what's safe and go from there.
I'm glad you said all of that. And I asked you the question I did, thinking you might say this because sort of know how you work. So some of the stuff you're saying, I know because I've been around you,
Sure.
and I I see your posts and I pay attention. But also, I think that, and this is just a personal opinion. And of course, every client is different. How
Mm-hmm.
you work with them, I have to find out. What kind of learner are they?
Mm-hmm.
What are the issues? How
Mm-hmm.
can we get to the not A
Yes.
as quickly as possible?
Mm-hmm.
What I found in early on is that when we get into all the, let's say, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying if you get into all the, okay, well, we got to go through, we got to use a roller, release this, and go through all these formalities. A lot of them, they're just going to check right out
Mm-hmm.
because they're bored, it hurts, and they don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't seen anyone else do it. It's like, well, this is not normal. Maybe that's good. Maybe some
Mm-hmm.
people like that. Some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for too long, and I really like the idea of just the cueing of let's try to take a better form. Like short
Mm-hmm.
foot. For those who don't know, if this is my foot, okay, and here's the ball of my foot. Here's my toes. Well, if we dig the toes in and draw the ball of the foot back towards the heel, it takes the flexor, the hallucis. God, it's been a while. I can't remember the name of it. Flexus lucis brevis. No, that's the other one in the front. Hallucis longus. The muscle that draws the arch and creates the arch, which is connected to the flexus hallucis,
Yep.
whatever, and the peroneals and all these things. So all these muscles are together. When you just do this with your foot, you can do it in your shoe. Everything changes. And if you have a slightly bent knee, not a locked out knee, and you're standing, you should be able to feel your glute eventually. Some people
Mm-hmm.
don't feel it right away, but if you concentrate on it or even just squeeze it on purpose, game changer. And then, we might be able to make quicker progress.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%. Mm-hmm.
Do you find that actually let's go to a question. Joel Yoder, he says, does Andy have exercises for ataxia. Have you worked with anybody who lives with ataxia?
I actually haven't heard of what that is. Yeah,
No problem. So
yeah.
ataxia is another movement disorder. Joel, if you're not, there's a group that I'm going to see if I can bring you in
Mm-hmm.
about ataxia, led by a gentleman out of Toronto, a physical therapist out of Toronto. And much like Parkinson's and MS, the four types of MS, but everyone is uniquely affected differently.
Okay. It's a neurological thing. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, it's not common, so it's not a household word for a lot of people, even in the trainer business or physiotherapist. A lot of people don't have experience with that. I only have experience with it from the traveling that I've done around the world. I've never worked with anyone here locally at home with it.
Mm-hmm.
But all I will say is this: just like Parkinson's, just like MS, just like all humans, diagnosis or not diagnosed with anything, we all have a few things in common: peripheral nervous system, central nervous system, and a brain, and they're all connected. They're all one unit, basically. And so if we can wake them up, that's a good beginning. And then really the rest of the intervention would come in dependent upon what the symptoms are. So um, it's like everybody else. You treat and work on what they need help with, and that will vary from person to person. But
Yes. I agree. So I'm just reading on it a little bit right now. So all of these things, not saying like I'm a pro, I'm literally just looking at it, but there's just very, very big commonalities between all of this. It's all neurological. Like 90% of movement issues are literally just, can the brain do what you want it to do? And if not, there's some type of neurological deficit. So um what Carl does, like you can do that for like neuromotor training. That's the ultimate idea, is that whether it's MS, ataxia, Parkinson's, is very, very similar symptoms. Like you still have like lack of coordination, you don't trust your body very much, like you're losing strength. So if you have difficulty walking, you have tremors, I have movement abnormalities. So like notice there's commonalities. One, strength issue, as in training your balance, coordination, and stuff. If you have ataxia, I'm very, very certain there will still be pronation of the foot and all of that stuff as well, because everything, the body naturally just likes to collapse inwards to protect itself.
mm-hmm.
That is the default protective mechanism. And if we can train our bodies to get strong by opening, that's where good movement patterns start coming in. Short foot technique, finding the core muscles, getting the lats stronger. All the fundamentals are the same, whether we're general population or have massive neurological conditions like these things. So the only difference is pace, cadence, um, and changing the amount of tension that you train. So you don't have to train harder or push. You actually probably need to do just a little bit less, but find ways to be able to down regulate your nervous system as much as possible and train as safe as you can. So all different things like the fundamentals, it's actually still stays exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, there are things that we can do specific to people with unique, let's
Yeah.
say, symptoms and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm thinking of something I say at every workshop is people with Parkinson's are people too.
Mm-hmm.
People
Yeah.
with cancer are people too. They're people
Yep.
first.
Yep.
People with ataxia are people too. Um, if somebody has tremors, well, there's a real good chance that there's a dopamine deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
It could be MSA, it could be Parkinson's, could be PSP. But bottom line is, or ataxia or generalized dystonia or certain types of dystonia. But, sometimes vibration is the thing that's going to wake
Yes.
up the nervous system. Maybe just if this is happening, an involuntary tremor, even if it's unilateral, boom, hold the hypersphere ball, hold something vibrating 5, 10, 15 minutes, temporary reduction.
Mm-hmm.
But also have people with no diagnosis, just essential tremors.
Mm-hmm.
Same deal. I
Yeah.
have what they call positional dystonia. It comes from doing this for years. rim
Mhm.
shot on the snare drum for 35 years, 5 nights a week. And a neurologist, when I was at dinner and taking a sip of water, when I'm down, I'm okay. When I'm up, I'm okay. When I'm here, boom. Not all the time, but so there's all kinds of different things. And then there can be unique ways of dealing with, let's say, calming those symptoms down. But my mother would be a good example of somebody who no diagnosis. Well, we can put the Naboso insoles in her feet, in her shoes, and boom. Or she goes barefoot a lot around the house now. She never used to do that.
Mhm.
But yeah, we're all humans first.
Yeah.
And so,
Is
Joel, I don't know if that helped at all. And if you have any questions, reach out to Andy, reach out to me. We're both. I'm just, I can't speak for Andy. I'm happy to answer any questions if we get further. I mean, that's fine. And uh, uh, Andy, Andy just knows what to do.
yeah, many of the times like all of these things is we baby ourselves over that diagnosis. Oh, you
Hmm.
have Parkinson's. Oh, you have this neurological issue. Oh, you have ataxia. You can't do anything anymore. I'm like, no, you can still do a lot. Um, and it doesn't mean you can't walk or do all of those things. Like, do everything and challenge your body just a little bit. Like, that's safe. Most of the times, we either do nothing or we do too much. So many times you have just have to play around with the stuff in between. Like
Hmm.
all movements are good, but not all movements are good for that one specific person at that specific point in time. So
True.
if
Yeah.
you find something else that's good for you at this point in time that feels safe, and if yes, cool, add a little bit more or take some of it out, add something else. So here's an analogy I came up with recently is that many of the times we hold on to too much tension and we don't know how to either let it go or realize that holding onto all that tension is not what you need at this point in time. So, for example, training really, really hard,
Hmm.
or when we're activating a muscle, like if you're trying to find the glutes or find the core, we just clench as much as possible to just like get 100% activation. So that's like you holding this fist and squeezing it as hard as you can, not just squeezing the fist. So if you just squeeze the fist, that's one thing, right? But if you irradiate, as in tightening up the fist so hard that you have to squeeze your forearm, to squeeze your bicep, to squeeze the shoulder, to squeeze the core and pull everything together,
Hmm.
that's typically how we're training.
Hmm.
Like, especially if you think about powerlifting, like training hard, you want the whole body to be so rigid that it's
Yeah.
so strong and it's using every single muscle in order to lift that one thing.
Hmm.
But or we can just hold a fist. You can do
Hmm.
this for 48
Right.
hours, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can squeeze like this for maybe a few seconds until you start losing that tension. So sometimes dosage, or actually all the time, dosage is key in my opinion. Like most of the times, we always train so hard that we have to push it to the limit instead of just realizing, hey, if we're just standing around and moving around, maybe we don't have to brace our core the whole time or squeeze our glutes or anything. Maybe we just need to be able to hold that shape or do this instead of squeezing hard every single time. So like depending on the scenario, like we just need to learn, hey, is do I need to squeeze 100% to do this? Or do I just need to relax and be able to hold this shape and learn how to breathe and process stuff? But most of the times it's either completely off or too on, but we don't
Hmm.
realize that there's all this range in between that we have control of how much tension. So we need to learn how to actually move between 1% tension to 99% tension. Own the ranges in between and learn how to regulate instead of just being at zero or 100%.
Yeah.
And that's where, yeah, um, the differences in like training for the most part, especially for the different populations, because some people are always here and they're never here. Some people are only here and they have zero idea how to get this.
Hmm.
So each person needs different modalities of training or different words and different cueing in order to address the current issues that they have or their goals.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And cognitive decline oftentimes accompanies movement disorders. So the cueing sometimes needs to be very, very specific and repeated and
Hmm.
repeated and repeated and demonstrated,
Hmm.
depending upon what kind of learner they are, if they're visual or not. But A lot of times the memory might not be right there where they didn't hear you, so you just have to keep repeating and demoing. Um, I like what you said. It reminds me of as a drummer, one of the things that a lot of drummers like to do is, play it fast, play it loud.
Mhm.
But if can you play the same thing soft and
Mhm.
slow,
Yes.
or even just soft and fast? That's a challenge, man. So that's why when we're practicing, we need to build it up, be able to, throw in some forearm into this, but bring it back down, and we're at the wrists, and then eventually we're just at the fingers.
Yep.
And it's the 1% to the 100%, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Got to have control. And same thing when we're moving
Mhm.
or anything, having that control is so beneficial. I'm curious to know, how much floor movement do you get people doing? It's a loaded question in a way, but do you
How
have
much
people get
floor?
on the floor and move around?
Uh-huh. Absolutely. So, um, I always start with very, very basic stuff. So after I figured out which muscles need to release, I teach them how to release that by foam rolling, all of that stuff. And then typically I just get them to roll. So reset, as in rolling on the ground, um, some type of crawling work. Um,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it as to integrate everything. And then I get them back up, and then I just teach them very, very basic movements of how to lunge and feel the foot, feel the hips, feel the glutes, feel the core. Can you get the lats firing? Can you hold this shape? That's where things go wrong. Many people think, oh, a lunge is a lunge. I'm like, no, 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 no. There's a very big difference lunging like this, where you feel every single muscle that you're supposed to feel. Do you own that position? And
Mm-hmm.
can you hold that balance throughout it? That's where the fine tuning and the cues just start having to get repeated over and over again. So I always start with squats, lunges, basic pushing movements, whether it's just a chest press, whether it's, with the dumbbell, whether it's with the band, any type of rowing movement to get the back muscles working. And it's not about the movement. Movement is just movement, but can you feel that movement, and can you allow your body to connect the muscles that you want to connect to? Because
Mm-hmm.
most of the times, as general populations, when they look at an exercise, they're like, oh, a row, I'm just going to do it. I'm like, because it looks like this. But I'm like, what are you feeling? 90% of people have no idea what muscles they need to feel when they're doing a specific exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So when you teach them that and they can start feeling it, that's where the game changer is. And we can start owning it. That's where true change starts happening. So feeling things
Yeah.
versus owning things are two completely different things. So getting from, oh yeah, I kind of get it, to, hey, I know every single time I do this one movement, bam, I got it. That takes mastery. That takes thousands and thousands of reps. And most of the time, years for most people. I mean, I've been training for over a decade until I could start feeling that. And I have like my martial arts backgrounds that gave me access to a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference, is like the quality and the connection and the patience that we need to be able to feel that. So many people give up and get frustrated and like, oh, and that's where I come in. I'm like, hey, it takes a while. Like, there's a reason why you're disconnected from this movement, and that's because you've never done it this way before. So
Yeah.
first couple weeks is always going to be a pain in the ass, because I'm poking and prodding and getting them in that right position all the time, because when they're not, something hurts. And as soon as I put them
Yeah.
in the right position, like, oh, that actually feels a lot better, or it doesn't hurt at all. I'm like, perfect. Let's teach you how to move in this way so that those muscles are activating and things are working well. And then over time, those reps start getting better. I cue less, and then I can just walk around and just observe. And it makes all other trainers' lives a lot easier when they go back to their coaches and all of that stuff. Because many of the times when people are done here, the fundamentals are set so they can go do their own workouts, but they know what to look for now. And that's always been my goal, to be able to teach people what they need to start looking for so that they don't need me to keep doing that stuff.
Yeah. I hear you. You know, just reminds me of the word mindful, being mindful of, first of all, knowing what to feel, then being mindful of whether you feel it or not. And if you do, how much do you feel it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it right? Is it appropriate?
Yep.
The mindful movement is actually a little part that a little thing I've been studying. It's not so little actually. It's even like mindful walking.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody has trouble walking, we're only going to work on walking, our stride length, stride symmetry, arm swing, posture, whatever. But mindful is huge. Plus, this topic comes up a lot when I talk with um, people in the movement industry or people living with Parkinson's or musicians. Is when you're moving your best, performing your best,
Mm-hmm.
you're here and you're now. You're in the here and now, which, according to Stanford University, there are here and now brain circuitry in our
Mm-hmm.
heads. We just have to fire them up so
Yep.
we can block out all the other crap. And then you're training your brain now. You got
Mm-hmm.
here and now fired up. Boom.
Totally.
You're here now. You're mindful. Even if it's in little chunks of 1 minute, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, over and over and over for a session,
Mm-hmm.
that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. I always tell my clients like, well, at least most people in general, like many of the times people just want trainers and stuff like that so they can check out of everything and they just be like, just tell me what to do. And I'm like, the best way to check out of your mind is to check into your body.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Oh,
more you can just
nice.
learn how to start moving your own body, you forget about every single other crap. Because if you're like, fuck, how do I get my glute to work? How do I get this? How do I hold this shape? How do I breathe while I'm doing all of this stuff? Like, there's nothing else you can think about. All that stress of everyday life stuff is gone because you're actually paying attention. Now, the tough part is learning to deal with that frustration of not getting it while you're trying to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
honestly just play with that. And I always challenge my clients like, hey, this is the part of it, like have fun with this, because this is one of those things that once you start owning it, like you got it, like you,
Yeah.
it's like riding a bike. Like once you get on, you'll, yeah, and you know how to ride it, you never forget. So like we just need to get our clients to the point where they can ride their bike by moving their own bodies, like, yeah.
And it's all the brain too,
Yep.
right?
It's
The
all in the
brain is the
brain.
thing that gets us back on the bike
We
and
are literally
moving.
our own worst enemies too, because
Oh,
like there's self-sabotage, there's just so
yeah.
doubt, like people, like, and I'm like that myself all the time, which is why I got a coach. That's why I picked up
Yeah.
martial arts again. So going, like, I love your drum analogy because this is something that I feel like everybody needs to hear. When you're learning something new, you are going to tighten up. It's going to suck. You're going to be very bad at it,
Yeah.
and that is okay.
This is true.
And that's the thing. Like playing drums in the beginning, if you look at the pro drummers, they're so loose. They're all over the place. Like they're actually very, very free. But
They're
have you?
flowing.
When I
Yeah. They're
played drums the
flowing.
first time, I'm like here. Like you don't know how to just move the foot. You move in the whole leg, trying to stomp on that. Like your arms are tight and everything like that, but that's because it's something I've never done before.
Hmm.
But get me something that I own, as in an animal flow or any other lat
Oh,
workout. I
yeah.
know how to just drop my shoulders and learn how to breathe and know how to move. It's like it's an intuitive thing. But get me on something unstable like surfing, I'm like here, like.
Mm,
But over time, I'm like, oh, okay, this is how I stand and hold this shape. Like, so that's
yeah.
where mastery comes in. Mastery comes in when you learn how to check out of your mind and you learn how to just let go because your body's got it. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Is that take your time to get to the point where you actually feel safe with your own body, and that's where things get good. So when I picked up martial arts yesterday, like the whole time, I'm literally an entire hour of these four movements. I'm just here learning how to be able to punch straight, open my palm, turn in, and come back. And
Hmm.
I'm still stiff and tight, like trying to hold here. I was like, holy crap, like, and my coach keeps telling me to relax, to keep the arms up, but I've never trained my body in this position, so I don't know how to be relaxed here. Over time, like this will become a natural thing, but like that's just the thing. It takes time. So, and this is something I've never done before. It's a whole different art form,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
technique that is very, very foreign to me. So when I have to add power, strength, tension, and speed in this, I don't know how to do it. So it's gonna take thousands of reps until like, oh, I can actually stay relaxed and generate power at the same time. So yeah, so like we got to learn how to let go, man. Like it's all up in here, and like I'm getting more humble now. Before I used to like be so frustrated. I'm like, "Fuck, I can't relax. What is going on?" Like, and I'm
Yeah.
so hard
Right.
on myself
I
because
know the feeling, man.
yeah, this
Well,
is
you
what
know
I
what?
do, and I'm like, no, it's gonna take some reps because this is something I've never
Yeah.
done before, and I'm learning that process, and it's just making life a lot more fun because I stop having these high expectations, and this is the here and now. It's like I'm having fun with it because I'm learning how to do it better. And that's the main thing that I feel like a lot of us need to keep reinforcing, because we expect to get things perfectly the first time we try
You know,
anything. And I'm like, seriously, like, let that go.
so there are three things on my mind right now.
Hmm.
We'll go in the reverse order of what I say though. So my friend Steve Hunt is watching and he has a question. So I'm going to
Hmm.
ask you this question and I'll ask it now, but hang on to your answer. It's Steve Hunt, by the way, is one of my favorite keyboardists, musicians, composers. He just came out with a new CD, an album maybe a week ago, the 25th of
Hmm.
January. And I've been watching him for decades, man. I love you, brother. You're the freaking best. Your music makes me emote. I feel so good when I listen to Steve. Steve says, have you ever worked with an amateur cyclist like myself? And if so, what seems to be the most common issue or pains? And what are your solutions? Cycling is a very repetitive type motion. So hang on to that.
Hmm.
What I wanted to say is I did martial arts, Gojo Ryu karate in the 90s for 9 years. Then I stopped because of cornea eye surgeries, and I didn't want to get like hit and stuff. Anyways, I started again 2 years ago, and then COVID came, so there's no dojo open. And what was really cool is, I started at white belt and then went boom, real quick up the rank again.
Hmm.
It's just like riding a bike, man. And I wasn't even that tense when I went back.
That's
So I
awesome.
just had to say that. But there's
That's
another thing you said that's really, real important. And I want to I've got to talk about this for a second. When I don't remember your words, but you were talking about, it's going to suck in the beginning, maybe, or it's not going to feel that good. There's tension, there's agitation. You didn't say that, but I'll just throw it in. It could be agitation. But if you think of yourself, this is me getting better. So basically, what's happening is you're attaching a reward to the effort.
hmm
And so there is research out there, folks, and I have it. It's from Huberman Lab, Stanford. And really, it just comes down to there are chemicals in the brain that are released when you're doing something that takes effort. Could be
hmm
learning a language, could be doing writing a paper, taking a test, trying to move a certain way, whatever it is.
Yep.
And one of the chemicals is this acetylcholine. I'm sorry, the noradrenaline that's released
Hmm.
that causes that feeling of agitation, strain, and effort.
Yep.
And so a lot of us, we just want to stop. This stuff I used to do as a drummer and practice, and I'm like, oh, how? But you know what? Got to slow it down, break it down, get it together. It's it's that noradrenaline. It's uncomfortable. It causes agitation, it causes frustration. It's an effort. But if I think, wait, this is me improving myself so that I'm able to work with these people and those people, or me being able to move a certain way, that is one of the things that I think a lot of people don't do
Hmm.
that they need to do.
Yep.
So they keep doing what they need to do to get to where they want to be and they don't give up.
Yep.
Attach a reward to the effort, absolutely paramount. Gergo Borlai is watching. Dude, I owe you a message. He's one of the most amazing drummers in the world. Thanks for tuning in, brother. We're going to talk soon. Okay,
Yes.
Andy. So, about the bicycle thing that Steve Hunt asked.
Hmm. Yeah. So, slightly vague question. I'm just gonna, I guess, just jump in. To ultimately, yes, you're totally right. Very repetitive. You always hunch forward, and most of the times you're looking at the neck and you're up here because you're looking at the road. So, biggest thing is try to find stuff to be able to open your upper back, as in your thoracic spine. These muscles in here, when that opens up, teach the neck to be able to glide back. So lean against the wall and then teach to keep your chin parallel. You need someone to help you with this, by the way, because most of the times when we try to draw the chin back, we tilt the head up because that's our default pattern. So work on learning to be able to draw that chin back, hold this space here, keep that upper back open, and then learn how to fire up your core and keep
Excuse me.
these abdominal muscles engaged in that aspect. Actually, all movement. So be able to. This is the main thing that I cue for virtually anybody is neck, um, hips as in butts tucked under, neck is back, and then learning how to move in that space without this, because that's most of the time what's going to happen. We're going to lunge and squat, and then this will happen again instead of being able to hold that shape. So the workouts are the same. Like the fundamental movements, there's only seven of them, as in push, pull, squat, hinge, carry, rotations, and anti-rotations. Like if
Hmm.
you learn how to do well in a few variations of these, it carries over to all the 3 billion variations of all of these same fundamental movements. I have this in my YouTube channel. You can feel free to go take a look at it all the time. But I try to deviate from directly saying, hey, if you're a cyclist, do these, because ultimately the fundamental movements are all the same. Whether it's even people with Parkinson's, neurological issues, like I still teach push, pull, squat, hinge, rotations, anti-rotations, just in
Hmm.
different ways. So learn how to do those and hold that good shape that feels good for your body, because holding that shape and learning to master these big seven fundamental movements is what's going to teach you what posture feels like. Is going to teach you how the glutes function, how all of this stuff is, and then that is passively going to give you better posture and reverse the natural deviations that you get or compensations that you get from cycling or anything repetitive and stuff. And
Hmm.
that's the idea, is to be able to set the fundamentals so that it preps you to be able to move freely for everyday life stuff. Like there's not anything specifically to be like, hey, like you have to do these 4 or 5 things. I'm like, there's never 4 or 5 things. There's always 3,000 different things that's going to help. So do those 3,000
That's
things.
true.
Just have fun with doing it.
Yeah, great advice.
Mhm.
Steve, yeah, I'll put a link to your YouTube
Yep.
channel in the description when I
Mm-hmm.
get this up on YouTube. And then if you have any questions, Steve, go there. But we need to talk too, anyways, and get you back on to talk about the CD and some other music stuff. Um, yeah, the bicycle is funny. I'm going off for just a minute because Steve worked many years with my favorite guitarist who ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Holdsworth passed away a few years, 3 4 years ago. And Steve says thanks, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
oh. By the way,
yes.
I have a really good friend, Tim. His Instagram handle, I don't know if you have Instagram, Steve, but SoCal Bike PT. So he's a pro cyclist that literally just teaches cyclists how to get better at cycling by activating all of this tissue. So
Oh,
great,
cool.
informative. So SoCal, SoCal Bike, BIKT PT for personal
Great.
trainer. Physical therapist. And then Victor Tort. You
Yeah.
have his details. You can link
I
his
can
stuff.
send you
Yeah,
Victor's stuff.
Victor,
He's a good
another pro
friend.
cyclist, one of my best friends. He's in Palm Springs. Amazing human.
I
Like
love that
I
guy,
work with him
man.
every single
I just
day. He
love
wants to
that
help
guy.
out for sure.
Steve, I'll hook you up on Steve. I'm sorry, Victor. Victor. Uh, who are we talking about? Alan Holdsworth. Yes, Steve worked with Alan, and so
Mhm.
where was I going with that? Oh, Alan Holdsworth was into bicycling, right? So he called it his thinking machine. That's what I really love about cycling is I solve a lot of my own problems cycling.
Mhm.
I got a new mountain bike last year, man. I've been
Yeah, I saw you
hauling
biking
ass
on a
on
couple
that
of those
thing, man.
videos.
You
I was
see the
like,
one where I dumped the bike?
yep.
Yeah, had the GoPro on the head, like whoop,
Oh man, that's so
nothing
great.
happened.
Yep.
Well, listen, man. I've hold on one second. Oh yeah, my friend Laura, very good friend of Russ and me, lives with Parkinson's. She's in Mexico near Laredo, Texas. She's I have PD, and sometimes I adapt some yoga postures. I do exercise in it. I tell you, man, she wrote a piece for my next book coming out later this month, and it's like so inspiring. I've been so inspired by so many people
That's
who
awesome.
have they're facing adversity, they're facing serious challenges, and yet they're kicking butt. And Laura is one of them. Russ is another one. I love you both. Um, this has been fun, man. We need to do it again sooner than later.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Always a pleasure, dude. Thanks so much for having me.
So, website. What's your website name if people want to go to it?
Oh, just movementreborn.com.
Great. And then from there, because I knew that, but I wanted you to say it. But anyways, So you can link there. Do you have social media links on there too
Uh,
from your site?
I can put it in the chat. I don't know how to.
Or just go in and search for Andy Hsieh. It's HSIEH.
Mhm.
HSIEH. San Diego Movement Reborn. And you have a business page too on Facebook,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
you're
Movement
on
Reborn,
Instagram.
anything. So Instagram, Facebook,
Yeah.
YouTube. Those are my three main avenues. So yeah, bunch of resources. I have a whole free exercise database on my website. So just look up on
Yeah.
movementreborn.com.
So
So yeah.
go there, check it out. There's great stuff. Follow him on Instagram because there are great posts there. That's where I get most of mine from you because I don't know why I just seem to have adopted that platform
Mhm. Yeah, for
for
sure.
instant gratification of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
all right, man. We have a lot of people saying thank you, Laura, Russ, everybody. Yeah, and thank you, brother.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
let's do it again. Thank you, everyone, for watching, for tuning in here on Zoom and on Facebook. Mi hermano de otra madre, Andy. I will talk to you soon, and we'll do it again.
Yes, man. Sounds good, brother. Have a good
All
one then.
right, bro. Yeah, take care now.
All right. Take it
All
easy.
right. Bye
Bye.
bye.